put before the crowds another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from? He answered, An enemy has done this. The slave said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them? But he replied, No. For in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time, I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first, and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. Then he left the crowds and went into the house, and his disciples approached him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. He answered, The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let anyone with ears listen. The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Is that how Jesus figured people out? By identifying them as either weeds or wheat? It seemed pretty functional to me on the way to high school every morning, back in the 1970s. For the granted favor of driving my mother's car around, I had to perform the duty of taking my sister to school every morning. She waited until the last possible minute to be ready. We might have driven a little faster than we should have on the way to school because I had to drop her right at the door before I found the last possible space in the student parking lot, and then ran into the school at top speed in order to get there before the bell rang. On my way, I noticed another late arrival, same every morning, same time, same people. They drove an ancient and very powerful sounding Thunderbird, waxed and washed to perfection and completely chromed out and gleaming. Wow. It was driven by a brother and sister, and they wore the same outfits. Black jeans, engineer boots shined to perfection, and white t-shirts. I had never seen a girl come to school in a white t-shirt before. Who were these people? They looked tough. I didn't waste any time trying to get to know them or socialize with them. I just headed into school and away from them as fast as I could because they looked like trouble. Weeds among the weeds, which I was sure that I was. One day, things changed for me in high school. Actually, it was one night. It was a Monday night, and my friend and I were on our way home from the library where we were researching for some papers we had to write. And on the way home, 2 cars full of high school guys decided that we were not to live. They rolled down their windows as they chased us in their cars, screaming things like, "You will die." We believed them. We tried to outrun them in my father's car, but they finally cornered us in a very respectable residential neighborhood. Somehow they got the door open and they touched me in the eye. Ouch! That night, there was a phone call. When I picked up the voice said, "You're dead," and then hung up. I knew who it was. The next day at school was murder. The guys followed me everywhere, laughing and teasing me and threatening me in voices that nobody could hear but me, and I felt absolutely alone. That afternoon in the parking lot, the only people at school who would speak to me, because everybody knew what was going on, the only people that would speak to me were the brother and sister in their white t-shirts and their Thunderbird. Both of them, the boy and the girl, said, "We will defend you if you ask us. We will beat up anybody who threatens you because we like you." All of a sudden, the weeds turned to wheat. I didn't know which was which, and it was confusing. It was always confusing, wasn't it? Which is why Jesus told the parable. How do you figure people out? How do you know the good from the bad? By appearance? Don't count on it. Those t-shirts and engineer boots can be deceiving sometimes, even in the first century. So Jesus told this parable to his disciples and the others as well. He said that it's like a good farmer sowed seeds in his field and expected a good harvest, but he didn't get it because somebody snuck in at night and for some strange reason sowed weeds among the wheat. And when they began to grow, the owner cautioned the people who worked the fields and said, "Don't pull them up. The roots intertwine. And besides, weeds and wheat often look almost alike. The moral of the story, you just never can tell. So don't rush to judgment." We finally figured out who the drivers of those two cars were that were chasing me that night and threatened my life and did more than that. And when we figured it out, my dad called a lawyer, and they ended up in court, speaking of judgment. But the judge was a wise one. He listened to both boys tell their story. One of the boys brought his mom to court with him and tearfully promised that he would never do anything like this again. The other boy came to court by himself and told the judge and anyone else who would listen that he had some pretty tough friends in Chicago and we'd better watch out. The judge handed down a verdict that Jesus would have been proud of. He who exercised caution in weeding out the weeds from among the wheat. He gave both boys 1 year probation, differentiating not a bit between the one who looked like wheat and the one who sounded like a weed. Wise judge. Jesus spends at least as much time explaining his parable to the disciples so that they'll get it. And they'll know too how to figure people out. He says that the sower of the seed is Jesus, the Son of Man. The sower of the weeds is the enemy, or Satan. And he exercises caution and advises caution. Wait until the harvest before you make any judgments. And when the harvest comes, judgment won't be yours anyway. It'll be time then to give God something to do, which is always a good idea. Let God do the judging. And when he does, he'll tie the weeds together and throw them into the fire where they're there will be gnashing of teeth. Whenever I go to the dentist, he tells me to stop gnashing my teeth. Is he trying to tell me something? Maybe he is. You never know who is a wheat and who is wheat. You just never know. After the trial, and the two boys got their delayed judgment in the manner of Jesus in his parable, I had time to think about what happened. Those two guys were supposed to be my enemies. And the people who I thought were my enemies, my parking lot companions, turned out to be my friends. What a world. How difficult it is to figure people out. How important it is to use a little bit of patience when dealing with other people, no matter how they look, act, and sound. The friend who was in my car with me decided to take another tack. He drove around with a gigantic barbecue fork in his car, telling me that if those guys ever came near, they would get a big surprise that they would never forget. And then he would wave his barbecue fork around in a meaningful way. Instead, I thought about the word enemy. Now I know that in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus uses the word enemy 4 times, once in this parable and 3 other times. The first time that Jesus uses the word enemy, what do you think he's going to say? Watch out, beware, put him down, get away? No. The first time in Matthew's Gospel that Jesus uses the word enemy, it's to advise his disciples to forgive those enemies. And so that's what I try to do. Today, you and I are the parable. We are trying to figure out who are the weeds and who is the wheat. We are the parable. And when we try and figure it out, the best we have to offer is forgiveness. Amen.